Welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and before we begin, I would like to put a trigger warning. Today's episode will consist of the topic of rape. If this is something that is triggering, I don't recommend listening on. Today, I interviewed my friend Angie Hughes, who used to be a fire captain. About a couple of decades ago, she was raped as a minor and mistreated by the team she was a part of. The mental health stigma was extremely high back then when she was a teenager, and she is here to give us the insight of what she went through. Enjoy! Hey y'all, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and I am with Angie Hughes today. She is a former fire captain from the Baltimore County Fire Department in Maryland, and she has taken the time out of her day to talk with us about her experience working there. We're going to be talking about how there's a huge stigma around mental health there, and then she's also going to open up about sexual assault. So thank you so much for being here, Angie.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So let's start. Let's just start with a little bit of a background, if you want to just kind of explain, like when you started as being like a fire captain, like how, like if you want to just kind of just dive deep into a little bit of a background, if you want to start there.
Sure. So I started as a volunteer in the fire service at the age of 16. You're able to join any most volunteer fire companies at 16. And then I was hired into the career department at the age of 19. So that's very unusual to start at such a young age. I had my paramedic certification, very young firefighter. And when I joined the career fire department, one of the first things I heard was, what makes you think you can do this job? Being a woman in a male dominated field is really tough. And my response was, what makes you think I can't? So immediately I had to show that very tough exterior. And then I just kind of worked my way through. I was a firefighter paramedic, a fire specialist, which works with kids and education, a fire lieutenant, and retired as a captain. I also did a lot of work with Women in Fire, which is an international organization that supports and mentors female firefighters.
That's really awesome. And I really like how the way you responded, saying when they were asking you, like, what makes you, like, I guess, different? Was that what you said? And then you kind of like went back and be like, well, why do you gotta think of it like that? And I see here when I looked up for information on Google, said that you started in 1989. Is that right?
Yes, in the career department.
Okay, yeah, that was before I was born.
Thanks.
So, so I mean, just the reason I bring that up is it is relevant just because the mental health was definitely a whole different world back then. And
Absolutely.
then also, it's just now there's a lot more female empowerment and it's more normalized that women are in like a male dominated field, which hopefully, more down the road, maybe like when I have grandkids, that it's not even looked at that way. Because me as being like, I don't even know what I am, a millennial, Gen Z or whatever, I just don't, I think of it like, I don't know. I don't look at things like, oh, only a male can do that. Like, why can't I do that? What's the big deal? I mean, you know what I mean? And also, at the end of the day, women are stronger, in my opinion.
That's
I
right.
mean, think about it. We got to go through more stuff.
Yeah. Well, honestly, the stereotype when I started was it's okay to be an EMT or a paramedic, but
Hmm.
as soon as you cross that line to want to be a firefighter, there was all kinds of targets, like, oh, no, you shouldn't, this is a male's job. Let the men do that.
Did you deal with like any type of like bullying, or I'm assuming the way it sounds, it seems like you were belittled.
Yeah, quite often. And my mindset was just I was going to continue to prove myself. I think a lot of the people that did that may have done it with an unconscious bias, and they were just being really tough,
Hmm.
thinking that they were going to chase me away. But that was my motivation to stay.
Yeah, no, that's good. So it's kind of like if they were being intimidating and like scaring you off, but you're like, and a lot of it's actually great that you did that because a lot of some people may get scared and just think, oh no, it's really just like for the men and such. But that's really very empowering and awesome. And thanks for sharing that. So when did you retire from this?
I retired in 2019.
Okay, so that was like not that actually not like right before the
Pandemic.
pandemic.
Good timing for sure.
Oh, I know, right? And then now you have a new life right now, which is a fantastic life. Would you bring that female empowerment background to One Hope, which is great. So you mentioned that there was sexual assault involved. If you want to like, want to bring that into the episode here, if you want to talk more about that.
Sure. And there are so many things that I could talk about specifically relating to that. It's kind of sad. But when I started as a volunteer at the age of 16, I joined the local department, and it was not many women. There was actually only one other woman there, some older women that rode the ambulance, but no one that was interested in firefighting. As I said, I was still in high school. You were only allowed to stay there till 9 o'clock on a school night. And it was one of these nights that we're in Maryland. The weather's crazy, and they were calling for heavy snows. So it had started snowing early in the evening. They'd canceled school for the next day, and I was allowed to spend the night. So one of my friends called me. It was back when you had a telephone on the wall and the long cord and everything. And she said, "Hey, a bunch of us are going to the firehouse tonight to spend the night. Why don't you come?" And at that point, I could only ride the ambulance. I wasn't allowed to ride the fire engine. I didn't have the training. It was just a training issue. I hadn't had completed the training. So I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. It's great." So I told my dad I didn't want to drive. My dad dropped me off at the volunteer house, and when we pulled in the parking lot, he said, "I thought you told me there was going to be a bunch of people here." And there was only one truck. And I said, "Oh yeah, there will be. They'll come after work." And he said, "Are you sure? Are you going to be okay here?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I'll be fine. I'll be fine." So I take my book bag and I go inside, and we had a day room where you basically sit, watch TV, eat, things like that. So I was in there studying, had my books, reading my EMT book, and all of a sudden I felt somebody touching my shoulders and kind of just shrugged it off. And then I looked up, and it was one of those people that you knew as kind of tagged as a troublemaker. Mm-hmm. So I walked into, ironically enough, the captain's office and was looking out the window, watching the snowfall, waiting for my friends to come, like hoping they would come soon, because it was just this feeling that I just can't describe. I was so uncomfortable, like almost I knew something was going to happen. With that, I heard the door close and lock.
Oh God, the lock part is the scary part.
Yeah, and I turned around. And I just kept looking at it. And then I turned back around out the window, and I was like, "What do you want from me?" And he's like, "Just coming in." Next thing I knew, I felt him pushing up against me, unzipping my pants. And, the rest you can figure out. I'm not going to go into the deep details, but I had to spend the night there feeling dirty, feeling like I did something wrong, feeling like I deserved what had happened to me. And I couldn't tell anybody that. I don't even remember the night as it went on. I guess it's the trauma. Mm-hmm. I remember wiping myself off. I remember they didn't have a shower for women. I remember cleaning myself off with these generic like brown paper towels. And the next day, the first thing I did as soon as I got home was showered. Couldn't wait to get that off of me.
Oh my God. That is, and you said you were like 16 or? Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I was 17 at that point.
Okay. Yeah, still you were minor, like especially during that time when it happens. I mean, trauma is trauma, but when it like happens when you're younger, you're like so like scared and just so confused. And then you say that you felt that. Did you say that you felt that it was your fault? Is that what you said? I don't know. Yeah, I did. That's typically a way that people think it's like it's their fault, but in reality, it's really not. So I always wonder why our brain thinks that. Like, why do we blame ourselves?
Yeah. And I did stop coming to the firehouse. Actually, I had called the Rape Crisis Center. And again, this was back in the 80s. The protocols have changed so much, but they were very persistent about information. They were able to obtain my name, my home address, things like that. But they wanted his name. They wanted information. They were trying to get me to come forward. And I said, I can't. Nobody's going to believe me. And I shared, this is probably, I must have done something to deserve this. It must have been the way I dressed. It must have been the way I acted. Everybody said women don't belong in these jobs. And it wasn't until my dad, so they mailed a letter, and my dad came to me and said, "Angela, what is this? There's a letter from the sexual assault center." And I immediately shut down and I said, "Oh, Dad, that's for my friend. Oh, she had a bad experience and she didn't want to call them, so I called on her behalf." So immediately started lying about it and, just kept it in. I didn't want to tell anybody. And it caused a lot of trauma later
Yeah.
in my life, especially with my first marriage didn't
Yeah,
work
of
out.
course. Yeah, I mean, I've getting like, getting sexually assaulted, and then it's like also just trusting, trusting men.
Hmm.
And did the person ever get like, arrested and put in jail?
I never pursued it. I
Mm.
never pursued it. But one of the things that I guess when you talk about why I thought I deserved it, kind of going back when I first joined the one of my friends joined the volunteer fire company with me, and she was more of the person. She liked to make sure her hair was done, her makeup was on, and really cared about her appearance. Not that I didn't, but I was more of a tomboy. So we're at a meeting one night, and the captain and one of the other officers calls us into the office, that same room where I was raped, and said, "We need to talk to you two." We go in there. We're both really excited. We think we're going to make a difference. We're going to start helping people. They shut the door and they said, "If you're here to meet boys, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out."
God,
Crazy,
what
huh?
is wrong with this place? Like, I just feel it kind of gives me a moment where it's like, I hate men.
Yeah, well, and it
I
was a
mean,
long
I don't
time
hate
ago.
all, they're not all like that, obviously, but I'm just in my head, it's just kind of like, I'm, it just makes me like so angry. And we did discuss before, like, like, you're not the first person to come on my podcast with a rape story. It's just how it's such a, I feel like lately it's just not lately. Like I feel like it's just so common. I'm so glad that girls are now, are talking about it because there are so many, rape cases out there that are still, you know,
Suppressed. People don't want to talk about it because they don't think anything's going to happen from it. And my friend quit. She said, "I'm not going to stick around for this." Where I was more of like, "Yeah, I'm going to stick and I'm going to prove I'm wrong." But I made sure I was wearing baggy clothes. I made sure I didn't wear any makeup. I made sure there was no way that I was going to look like I was there to meet boys. So a few months go by, and the captain says to me, "I'm really glad you stayed, Angie." And I said, "Oh, what?" I said, "Well, a couple months ago, you told me don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. I don't understand what you're saying." He said, "We knew you had potential, but we wanted to get rid of her. We didn't like the way she dressed. Her pants were too tight. She had on a lot of makeup. We knew what her intentions were. So imagine when I'm being raped, I'm hearing this in my head. I have potential. I have potential." And then after the rape, I left for months.
yeah, well, I would
For
too.
months.
I Do you ever see your rapist after that incident happened, you're working there for a bit. Like, did you have to can you have you come across that person? Like,
Yeah. So you asked this, and sometimes I just forget about it. But when my youngest son was in preschool, his niece went to the same preschool. So I was in my 30s,
mhm.
and we had to go on a field trip with them, and I was stuck. And I had so much. It's not that we were like talking to each other or anything, but he was there, and that immediately caused panic. That caused
Yeah.
a breakdown, and that caused so many things that came back, and my marriage ended after that. I just so much came back that I had suppressed and I had not gotten help. That's why I say if it happens, even if you, I would say come forward. I know it's really hard, but if you can't come forward, at least get help for it. Don't let that just fester for years.
Yeah, because I think people don't realize that because there's, with failed marriages, there's many reasons why marriages can fail, but it's just figuring out what's the reasoning for it. So, I mean, this has nothing to do with like, it's not really relating to your situation, but I'm just kind of just giving a little bit of my example here. I mean, I have like trauma from like my past relationships, not like what's went through with you or whatever. And I'm not really here to talk about me, but I'm just basically just saying how it's good to talk about it with your partner. Like when you were in that marriage, did you by any chance bring up that that rape to that partner, or was that something that was just you kept it to yourself the whole time?
No, I did because I had problems having sexual relationships with him. You know, there were certain things that if he did, it would send me into hysteria, you know, so I had to have that kind of conversation, but it was still, that was something that is very intimate that I
Yeah.
couldn't feel what I needed to feel because I'd never had gotten help.
Yeah. And how long ago was this? Was this
Oh gosh, over 30 years.
over 30 years? And but I think that's, could you mention how you were nervous to, talk about it and to get help, but I'm like really proud that you are bringing this conversation onto a public podcast.
Yeah. So as my work evolved, and honestly, most of a good part, probably the first half of my career, I was not an advocate for women because I was taught kind of that you always had to prove yourself and that women didn't deserve the job and that I was something different from everyone else. And any other woman that came in, you know, if they were pretty, not that, I mean, as a young 16, even 20-year-old, long blonde hair, blue eyes, you know, it wasn't like I wasn't attractive, but when women showed, you know, that they were attractive and wore makeup and dressed differently, they were looked upon and given that kind of stereotype of being loose, or as they would call it back in the day, or
Yeah.
you know, sexually permissive, or what have you, or gosh, God forbid you had any kind of relationship with a person in the fire department. It went, you know, everywhere. And actually my husband is a fire captain as well. But yeah, so it took me a while to be an advocate, and I found that as I joined the organization to support women firefighters and became a board member, and then later the president, there was a lot more of this that had happened that people weren't reporting and people were afraid to talk about. And we used that as a platform to move forward and share some education. And the thing is, there just was no education on it.
Yeah, and yeah, especially like I mean, when I was in high school, which was because I became more of a mental health advocate after high school. Like during high school, people would just think I'm annoying and like didn't listen to me and think I'm crazy and so this I was in high school with the years of 2010, well 20 sorry 2009 to 2013, and then during that time people weren't taking mental health seriously. So I just feel like just pretty much recently it's being more spoken about, especially with the pandemic and everything like that. A lot of people who may not have had to go through, hardships like we do or have like mental illness, like just humans aren't supposed to like be isolated. So they're feeling that anxiety and depression. So they're like, oh wow, I'm feeling it now. This is actually real. Right?
Absolutely.
So, and then also the internet, hence like my podcast and just like TikTok and just everything, it gives people the ability to talk about people's stories and they're like, oh wait, this is actually a thing. Like, but there's of course there's still people out there who still don't get it. But I just feel like we
Mm-hmm.
definitely have evolved like as a society when it comes to mental health. But it's just it and like mental health was spoken about around that time, but it just was like always been taught to like on the hush hush. Like don't bring your problems to like don't tell like the family members, or like don't burden people, and it's just like who decided this? you know
Right.
like who is
Right.
the person that decided let's keep it on the hush? That's how it's supposed to be. But then not realizing keeping things on the hush hush just makes everything worse. And then the suicide rate's high because then
Oh.
and it's just like who thought of this? And it's kind of like this is kind of irrelevant, but like I always think of who thought of that stupid 40-hour week BS before.
Well, I can tell you in the fire service, you know, we have this little line I share with some of my friends that do social justice work. The dinosaurs retire, but they lay eggs. So the older people that have these beliefs, they instill them on these younger generations and saying, this is how you fit in. And there's that stigma of, you have to be tough. You think about when people say fireman, they don't say firefighter. And when you envision that, you envision somebody muscular, a man. But 80% of the calls typically are related to EMS and rescue, where that's where you have the benefit of having the women that are critical thinkers, that are caring and compassionate. But that it just takes a few bad apples, and just building trust is really hard when you get to that point. Luckily, the fire service is starting to evolve, and they just, I kid you not, in the past 10 years have started tracking suicides. And the data with that is crazy. We were just granted funding for a study on female firefighters because really wasn't enough of us to do it. And we found the mental health effects on female firefighters from discrimination, from harassment, from, all kinds of different things have not only hurt their mental health, but their physical health. They're out of work more, they're injured more. The alcohol rate is through the roof for first responders, and drug abuse.
Wow. And it's true. Like a lot of people don't also talk about how mental health is a huge, it contributes to your physical health. And I did interview some person who has a nonprofit. It's called Start Day One, and he focuses not on like the after like effect of like having like mental health issues, but he talks a lot more about preventing it. So that he's like a huge, like, that's like a big belief on it, because the way that our health system is set up is to treat the symptoms. I mean, I do know like we obviously have our physical like checkups, and that's supposed to be preventative, and but we don't really like have a mental health one. I mean, when you go to get your physical done, when you answer questions, it does ask like, hey, you depressed? Like,
yeah, who's gonna say yeah?
Like it does have like you check if you're depressed or something like that, but it doesn't, like, I don't know, I just feel that
People see it as a sign of weakness if they say that.
yeah, I mean, that's why I made this podcast. Like, I don't, it's not a sign of weakness. And just like
It's
listening
not.
to your story, like if I was in a position where I was a teenager and I got, sexually assaulted by someone, and then, you know, having to see that person and having to still work in that environment, like that's hard. So I'm just like, I don't know if I can. I mean, I've never been put in that situation, thankfully, but it's just that really does like make you as like a badass, and it's like that's not it doesn't make you weak, like just. And the people who don't understand that are literally the people who probably never have been through something like that. And another thing too is that every human being is different when it comes emotionally. Like some people are more sensitive, like with their nervous system, like it's an actual thing. And you know how like back in the day, people would be like, "Oh, stop being so sensitive."
Right.
Like they'll say stuff like that, and
Like,
then
why are
it's
you
like
anxious?
so, oh, it's just, oh, you're anxious, just stop being anxious, or just breathe in, breathe out, or whatever, like BS. But it's literally scientifically proven that there are people out there who are just more sensitive, and like that's just their like
Genetics.
their genetics, and like the way they're built, and it's like that's not their fault, that's like how they're built. So, and it just makes it even worse, like if people are saying to stop being so sensitive, be like, well, you're gonna tell me to stop having cancer? Like,
Right.
again, it's just, I mean, all of these comments are, based off of just ignorance. And I think that just makes it like we're literally, at the end of the day, we are connected as human beings, but people just don't like understand that even though we are connected as human beings, like everybody has different genetics, different experiences, different, like, it's just they don't understand that. And I think I'm kind of going a little off to a different topic, but that's kind of how I get with my podcast too. I kind of just like I get on a topic and I just go ham on it because it's just my thoughts about it.
I find too, like, even before I went public, I waited until I retired to go public about the sexual assault because I was afraid of the repercussions in my career.
Oh yeah.
My family knew and such, but I found when I became an advocate for women and I was noticed on a national platform where I keynoted at the world's largest fire service conference, and that's not to toot my horn, that's to share a story. Mm-hmm. When I did that, there was so much hate on social media. I was the first woman in 90 years, and just so much hate. There's a website that specifically hates women and people of color.
Oh yes, you said there was a hate website. What is this website?
Yeah, they pose themselves as a firefighter training website, but they hate on women, hate on people of color, and I was slam pig of the week. They none of them use the real names. They make up names based on like firefighter movie act figures and things like that. And they were putting pictures of me on my speech, like one of the proudest days, talking about my son that's in the department. Put my coin up there that was significant to me being the first woman to do this keynote at the world's largest fire service conference in 90-year history. And it was just it almost took the life out of me. But then I thought, you know what? These assholes aren't out here doing this. They're just jealous, and
Yeah.
they want me to feel bad about it. They want me to be embarrassed, and I'm not going to let them do that to me.
Yeah, I feel like you've been through shit, man. Like, but like, like that's just me being like all like just the bullying and like being looked down on for being a woman, and yet you still like are on top of it. You know what I mean? Like you're still just soaring and being a star. And I like how long ago was that hate website thing? And also, by the way, that is like so mature of them. I feel like what is this, high school?
It's still it's still up and running, the website. It's on Facebook.
Really?
Yeah,
What?
they'll post pictures
Can I
and
troll it?
degrade people.
Troll it.
I'm blocked from it,
Oh
so
my
it's
God.
not even worth it.
Yeah.
It's so much hate and negativity, and it's just like it's people that make fun of other people because they have their own insecurities, is how I feel.
My God, imagine being so sad that like you create a group just to hate on other people, just to make yourself feel good about yourself. When I was in high school, like there was like a hate Facebook group about me. I got taken down right away. But and then like my boyfriend, same thing happened to him when he was in high school. And I mean, him and I both have like pretty big personalities and stuff like that. So I just think they always target those people because we
Mhm.
put ourselves out there, and they don't like that. And they probably feel like that's
Absolutely.
hard for them. So they're like, oh, well, let me put them down. They're so high up. I'm going to try to bring them down. And like I said, that happened to me in high school. So like the fact that it's like happening, like we're like full grown adults, like what the fuck?
It's
Like what?
crazy. Yeah, it is. It is crazy. And again, it's just hate. It's hate. It's jealousy. I feel sorry for those people that they have to result to, that they have to do those things to make themselves feel good. And a big part of it is they want to go back and sit, like we always talk about sitting around the firehouse table, the kitchen table. That's where everything happens. We talk, we kind of just talk about the bad things we've seen. We joke, we laugh. Sometimes, often, a lot of inappropriate things happen there too, and that's where they'll bring out their phone and they'll like, look what I posted on this site, and I'm making fun of her, or I'm making fun of that, person that we don't.
My
They don't
eyes are
belong here.
rolling. Like if this was a video podcast, y'all see my eyes are just rolling back. Like this stuff just annoys the crap out of me. Like, and these are bullies that never like probably had people stand up to them.
Hmm.
I feel like.
Imagine this is the person that's coming to your house when you have an emergency,
Oh God.
right? Right. And unfortunately the fire service is a great place and it's full of amazing people, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of turds. And when I was a captain before I retired, I was the only female captain in out of 1,000 people, the only one in the career
Impressive.
department. Now since I retired, a few have promoted, which I love because I feel like, I showed them you can do it, and I showed them that no matter what people are going to say, you just have to go out and be you. But I can tell you, if there was a fire come out in my area where people knew I'd be the first one to respond, they would turn on that radio just to listen, just to hear, because they wanted me to fail. And they wanted to be able to talk about it. And I would be accused of things I had nothing to do with, which was even crazier. One time, a friend of mine called me. I was on vacation, and he said, "Guess what you did now?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, you just threw some guy against the wall because he used the women's bathroom, and he's in trouble." I said, "Really? Gosh, I did that all the way from North Carolina to Baltimore County. That's
Good
awesome.
for you, girl.
I have
Yes.
superpowers, I guess."
Oh my gosh, there's this artist. Her name is Lessa Barrett. She hasn't really been a music artist for a while. She actually was like one of the lucky TikTokers that got famous, but she used her platform for her music, which is great because her music is just so good. And a lot of what you're telling me kind of reminds me of the song Pretty Poison, which is basically because with her personal experience, people on TikTok are mean.
Hmm.
They make up these stories. They when I first found out who Nessa Barrett was, they made her seem like this like problematic person who called all this drama and this and that. But and she's not the type of person to like go on and like talk about like she tells her side through her music. So because the thing is, what I never look down at celebrities. Like I know a lot of people look at the Kardashians and they're like, oh, they're these like people. Like I just feel that unless you know them personally, like why are we talking down on these people? Like we don't know their life. We're only judging based off of what you're seeing on the screen. And from somebody who did YouTube, I can tell you very well, it's very easy to make someone look like they're someone they're not based off of just
Hmm.
editing. Like everything is so different. So I think just from my experience of just doing like video stuff and YouTube, and it's just like I can make myself like I look back at some of these videos and I'm just like I look like such a like I'm not that kind of person or whatever. So anyway, but
Right.
so with her, she would get so severely bullied on TikTok and just social media overall that she would have to like she like deleted her abs. Like if she was like she also has BPD, like borderline personality disorder. So she takes things obviously harder and it's just really, she basically talking about her story through her music and her music's really, really good too. Like I'm obsessed with her music. So in this Pretty Poison lyrics, she's basically saying like, you guys are all talking about me, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty poison, like in your veins or something like that.
Wow. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah. And then like basic, and then one of the lines was saying like waking up with like knives being thrown at you because she'll wake up and like I guess read those negative comments. So like she's just super creative, and I just feel like that's kind of like the same situation as you. Like obviously it's different. Like I mean, actually not really different. Like I mean, she still got you guys got bullied the same way except she was being seen by like a bunch of like TikTok like like thousands and millions of people like and then you had like the firefighters and such. So it's the same concept.
Right.
um but it's just like so when you're saying like, oh, did you hear what you did, and it's like, oh, I did that, and it's like people just making up all these lies for their own entertainment. And then like her music video for that song was so good. It was pretty much a video. Part of the video was like in a movie theater, and then like it was kind of creepy because she's also kind of this. She's is her brand is a little creepy, but I love it because I'm just crazy myself. And like it's in a theater, and like everybody in the theater has a mask on, like not like like an actual mask, not like like looking creepy, like basically watching her on the screen, and she's all the way in the back of the theater watching people watch like the lies on the screen or something like that.
uh,
Because
I feel, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I mean it's just pretty much just her explaining like you guys are just making like all these lies for your own personal entertainment. So when they're eating the popcorn, eventually they like eat poison and then they die or something. I don't know. But she's very creative. um but her point was that, you may be talking shit about me, but at the end of the day, like I'm like in your veins or something like that because how you can't get enough of me. It's like kind of, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And, I feel like a lot of people, and I was going to ask you your thoughts on this. I feel a lot of people, when they do that stuff, when they post things on social media, now TikTok wasn't a big thing when everybody was hating on me. So I guess I'm lucky for that one. And I tried not to read them, but I think they do it a lot of times just to fit in. The
Mm.
first article I ever wrote that was published was titled "What is a Fireman?" And basically, someone had wrote a blog about how to be a fireman, you have to be filthy, dirty, snot coming out of your nose, not wearing your mask on fires. And they're all things that lead and contribute to illnesses and cancer and problems in our culture. And it was at a point where we were having good cultural change. And I said, wait. That's not a brand. That's not, you shouldn't wear dirty turnout clothes, and helmets and things and dirt on your face. That's cancer. You shouldn't use that as a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
You should, talk about being, you know, not reckless, just being aggressive but not reckless. And in the fire service, there's a true problem with that, because you think about running into a burning building, you want to make sure that you're risking a lot to save a lot. So if it's an abandoned house and there's flames coming out of all three floors, what are you going to save?
Mm-hmm.
But some people will say, "Oh, I've got to go in there. I've got maybe there's a homeless person in there." Truly, is it worth risking your life and not coming home to your family? And that might sound harsh, but that when you knowing about the signs of fire, the temperature would be so hot in that place that nobody would be able to survive. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd be doing nothing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to just say, think about being aggressive but not reckless. Think about cancer. You have to at some point take some responsibility. And as a leader in the fire service, I couldn't let the people that worked with me do those kind of things, and I had to take a stand for it. And immediately, the people that were the worst were the women that wanted to be able to fit in, and they could say, "Oh, look at this." People would send me screenshots. "She said this about you. She said this about you." And it's like, please don't tell me that, because I don't want to hear it. I'm just going to be proud of what I do. I'm going to be able to lay my head on the pillow at night, and I have no regrets.
Okay,
But
great.
yeah, it was just talking about the article. But yeah, so the women were really terrible, and I know that they do it to fit in. And that's a crazy culture in the fire service, and we're working really hard to change that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's taken a lot of work.
So, are you still involved with them? I mean, I know you're retired, but like, are you involved in any way with them?
Yes, so I'm on the advisory board for the Women in Fire. I being the past president, I'm on the advisory board. But once I retired, I was I was trained in social justice. So I was scheduled to teach to different fire departments across the country, and then COVID happened. So that kind of got put on hold. Just recently, I've been teaching at different fire departments and fire chief conferences, just to kind of share my story, because people don't realize that it happens, and it's kind of a shocker. And I have to say this, this might scare people, or I've had women walk out of the room that have had similar experiences after I tell my story. So I have to start with, this is a pretty tough thing to talk about. I'm going to talk about sexual assault. If this is a trigger for anybody, you may want
Mm-hmm.
to leave now.
Mm-hmm.
And the men they're like the fire chiefs, and they want to come over and hug you, and then they're like, "Can I touch you?" Which I appreciate, because they're being allies,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to see it change, and they have a hard time grasping. But I guess me telling my story, that and hearing it in my voice, they know it's true, and it's
Yeah.
powerful, but it's hard to tell. And I'm getting to the point where it takes me a day or two after that to really get back into my positive energy, so to say.
Yeah. Well, on the bright side here, I mean, you bringing this on here, your story is going to be told to more people, and they're going to listen, and, you know, hopefully it encourages them to, talk about it. And if they're, you never know, if they're in a position, because with the way SEO works, if the way I'm going to title it, I'm going to put that words in there. And if people, listening to it and they're going through it, hopefully your story can help somebody from somewhere in the country, in the world. Like, I have listeners from all over the world. I'm starting to get a
Oh,
listeners in
nice.
Australia. I don't know how. Hey, what up, Australia?
Awesome. Hey, what up?
I was looking at my analytics, and I was like, oh, I'm starting to get more people in Australia. Cool. But yeah, I mean, I kind of wish on like on YouTube people can comment and engage, but I'm like podcasting, they can't do that. I mean, they can put reviews on like Apple Podcast, which, by the way, if you're on Apple Podcast, leave me a review. Appreciate that. But I just like, that's why I have like my Instagram account, so people can find me on Instagram and talk with me there. And I've had a person reach out to me who is bipolar and said, "Hey, I found your podcast and I really needed to hear what you had to say."
Oh, that's amazing.
So, I really do appreciate, like you words. I sound like a robot. I appreciate you. Gotta love it. This is what happens when you talk for a while. But I do appreciate, bringing your story onto here. But what I like to ask my guests is that if you have like any advice that you would like to give like to any of my listeners that are listening on your story.
Sure. And anyone that has to share their story, I have this like quote I love to share. It's
Hmm.
not every day you can save a life, but every day you can change one. So if you have a story to tell, it might make a difference for someone else on something just like this platform. Don't be afraid to get help would be my biggest suggestion. I would advocate absolutely for doing whatever you need. My biggest regret, if I have any regrets, is that I didn't do anything because I always wonder who else he did this to.
Hmm.
Who else suffered because I didn't come forward?
Oh, I'm sorry you have to think of it like that. Hopefully he realized how much of a jerk he is and came to his senses or something like that. But man, I'm sorry yeah, that's definitely not a fun thought to have. So yeah, I don't want to end on that note. So let me try to switch it up a little bit.
Okay. But no, no. So seriously, I would say so that's my biggest regret is not coming
Yeah.
forward because I wonder if there was anybody else that he had done this to. But I'm here to tell you that if something happens to you and you need help, there's so many resources out there
Hmm.
specifically for rape. There's Sexual Assault Recovery Center, there's people you can talk to, there's trauma lines that are 24/7. Reach out, get some help. Don't let it affect your entire life. You have to find a place where you can, I don't want to say forgive them, but for me, it was forgive myself
Yeah.
and just and move forward with life. And I'm no longer ashamed. That's the
Hmm.
biggest thing for me. After going, after 30 some years and actually going public about it, it was healing for me because I'm no longer ashamed. Even though that happened to me, and I know God doesn't want anything bad to happen to people, but it happened to me and I've made a difference because of that and I've changed lives as a result of that. And as I said, not every day you can change a life, save a life, but every day you can change one. And
Hmm.
that is an amazing feeling to know you've done something good for just one person. It's that's why I'm here. My job's
Yeah.
complete.
Yeah. No, seriously. And I mean, and you and I were both in the career of purpose, so
Absolutely.
which is why we connect so well. And it's like, it's so sad that they had those, those negative groups, but it's also just super grateful that we were be able to connect with One Hope because our community is filled with positivity,
Absolutely.
which
And
is a big thing. Yeah.
yeah, and the fire service too. They're really working to make change. They've
Okay.
done a lot of work on cultural change specifically,
Hmm.
anything from safety aspects, but more the mental health is so important. They even have initiatives through the National Fallen Firefighters for family members now to understand what we're going through as first responders, because that's a whole other thing if you don't understand our language and our lingo. But they care about us. They care about making sure that we're mentally okay, and they preach that it's okay to not be okay. And they have critical incident stress teams in most departments across the nation. So I'm
That's good.
grateful that there's change.
Yeah, no, that's actually really, really good to hear, knowing that they are working on that. And I'm just like a big, I'm really am proud of that because, it really stinks of how they treated you and what happened in the past. But if they're showing that they are trying to change and they're realizing what they're doing is wrong, like that is a step forward in the right direction. And it shows that, having these conversations it's working. And it's kind of like, you know, what is it called? What is it? Something with dogs and treats and old dogs. Teaching an old dog new tricks or something
Oh
like
yeah, I
that.
call them courageous conversations, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah, seriously. All right. So again, thank you so much for being on here. If you want to leave all your like social media like in the description.
sure,
And yeah, so people can follow you or if they want to reach out to you or whatever, I'm gonna leave that all in there. But
perfect.
yeah, and for everyone listening, I hope you guys have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or wherever you are, and stay tuned for next week's episode.